Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Trending, brought to you, as always, by the brand new range of Iconic Coffee. It's good to be back with you, mate.
It is. I was just thinking, how long can we say brand new range? Maybe one more week?
Yeah, one more week, I reckon.
And then it's just new range for a couple of weeks.
Last time me and Gaz were together, we were diving into the sea after cycling 200 miles. So, well, this is a slightly more civilised setting.
My backside still hasn't recovered though, ladies and gentlemen. My legs feel all right, backside.
My legs have only just stopped hurting, to be fair. But thank you so much. Yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for your support. To date, we've raised 11,360 quid, which we're going to start sorting out what we're doing with that in the coming weeks, and we'll share that with everyone down to every last penny. So those of you that have supported us, thank you so much. Also, there's a documentary that we worked on, which will be coming out in the coming weeks, showcasing it. There was some funny experiences, wasn't there? Day 2 in particular was quite entertaining.
Lots of moaning.
And that was
on my part.
Yeah, on Gareth's part mainly, yeah.
That's my attitude. I'll moan a lot, but at least I'll do it.
Yeah, and I nearly died on day 1, to be fair.
It was.
I felt the breath of a car go past my shoulder.
Yeah, there was a few takeaways, ladies and gentlemen, from it. One being that motorists don't give a monkeys about the fact that you're on a bike. They don't care.
And Britain's roads are horrendous.
They really are.
They're pothole central.
Yeah, but it's a beautiful country if you ignore the solar farms.
Absolutely.
Which are everywhere.
Right, where are we going first then? Lab leaks back.
Lab leaks back. Yeah, back again. Tell a friend. This time in the New York Times. So we're going, left leaning. Chat about the lab leak, the COVID lab leak, Wuhan lab leak. That's been in like the New York Post, which is obviously a more right-leaning publication, and places like that for a while. But now it's seeped into the mainstream liberal, for want of a better term, media, which I think is quite telling because that's what's going to make it go mainstream, of course. It's one of them, right, ladies and gentlemen, because the thing about the lab leak theory is it keeps it all in place. It keeps everything there still. So if you've got a lab leak, you've still got a brand new pathogen.
Yeah,
you've still got an illness that's taking people down, which means you can still have your lockdowns and you can still have your masks and you can still have your mRNA vaccines. Nothing really changes other than the fact that someone else is guilty of it as opposed to it being some wet market or whatever the other original nonsense was. So I look at this and I go, okay, there's a couple of things at play here. Well, in fact, there's 3 things at play. One being the fact that the COVID narrative is kind of falling apart.
Yep.
The more inquiries that you have in different nations, obviously we've got one in Britain at the moment, which will be a whitewash, of course it will, but certain things come out in it, which gets people talking. And so your so-called normies, for want of a better phrase, that were calling us all granny killers and tinfoil hat wearers and telling us to stay at home and all that sort of stuff are now starting to go,
Hang on a minute.
Hang on. Maybe I was played here.
Yep.
So you've got to put them back in the box. And so, of course, the lab leak theory puts them back in the box because it still means everything was needed. What it also does, in this instance, is it starts to pitch the US and China against each other. We've been talking for a few weeks about the fact that, Russia, Iran, China versus the West, that's the idea for the Third World War. Russia, piece of cake, they're already involved. Iran via Israel, piece of cake, already involved. How are they going to draw China in? Well, this could well do that. If they can prove that the Chinese somehow leaked a virus into the planet that killed, millions of people and hundreds of thousands of Americans and destroyed the economy, I think the American people will support some kind of sanctions at least, or at least, some kind of retaliation against China. So that's part of it. The other thing for me, just finally, Jay, that I think is really big, and I use this analogy a lot, but I think it works, is if you've got a portion of people that smell a rat, so they think they've been lied to, they think this don't add up, this ain't right, and there's a lot more people like
there is
now than there was before, but there was also quite a lot, to be fair, even when COVID first arrived, they were going, hang on a minute, flu's disappeared, what's going on? So they suspect something. So what you need to do is you need to give them something.
Yeah, chuck them a crumb.
Chuck them a crumb. And so I use this analogy. So if you imagine, right, your wife's had an affair for 20 years. She's been having it off with a co-worker for 20 years, right? Horrible. You start to suspect something. You feel something now. She's been distant. She's been off. She's been on her phone all the time. She's hiding things. Hang on. I think something's going on. Now, your wife's got 2 choices. She's got 3 choices. She can just deny it and say, no, it's nonsense. Well, that's not going to make you feel any better because you suspect something. Or she can tell you she's had a 20-year affair with a co-worker. Well, that's not going to go down well either because you're going to, in theory, it's over, innit?
Yeah.
So there's one in the middle. Okay. I went out last weekend with the girls. I had too many drinks. I kissed a bloke. It didn't mean anything. I regret it. I'm so sorry. I love you. Right? Yeah. He is obviously mortified. She's necked some guy in a pub toilet. So you're gutted.
Classy.
But it might not be enough to end the relationship. You've got a house together, you're married, you've got children together. That's more important. It was just a kiss. Yeah, all right, fine. But what it has done is it's placated you in terms of, I knew something was up.
Yeah.
I knew it. I sensed something. And so what's happened is everything's hunky-dory. After a while, you work it out. The relationship's still in place, right? But it's nonsense because she still had the 20-year affair. Yeah. And for me, the 20-year affair is that COVID was a freaking hoax.
Complete hoax. I don't think they care what you believe, as long as what you believe means you believe COVID existed.
Yeah.
I think if you look back through, right, even in the early days, I remember, I think it was April 2020, when it was first talked about there wasn't a virus. I interviewed Andy Kaufman on Dad's YouTube channel at the time, and it got deleted because at that point, he was one of the only people saying there's no virus. Anything that talked about 5G, anything that talked about lab leak, anything like that was allowed to continue. It was people that said there's no virus. Yeah. It doesn't exist. Those were the people that were completely censored. And what's interesting, you mentioned there that like a lot more people smell a rat. I was really, really pleased to see something the other day, right? So my wife Beth sent me a link to a paper on the Isle of Wight called the Island Echo, right, which is just an online paper on the Isle of Wight run by a guy I went to school with, actually.
Good friend of yours, isn't he?
Yeah, we got on. Anyway, it was a story about a magician on the Isle of Wight called David Randini that everyone on the Isle of Wight, my age in particular, even your age, would remember.
Mate, I know Randini.
And it was all about what COVID was like for him and and he was a proper crazy one in terms of literally the most extremes of what lockdowns were. All of the comments, and I'm talking about 80 or so comments, we got completely played. What a hoax that was. Can't believe I took the vaccine. My dad was injured by this. This happened. What a fraud. Not a single comment was saying, actually, I remember COVID, how bad it was. It was all, yeah. I can't believe I got duped, can't believe I fell for it. And given what we think about the Isle of Wight, reading that made me feel like, okay, thank God more people are seeing this. Now, obviously, stories like this, they need to put a lid on those people, don't they?
Exactly.
Because the last thing they want is people going, hang on a minute, I'm coming off and having a look here. Oh, okay, yeah, that appeases me because, it was a lab leak. That makes sense. I knew something wasn't right, like you said.
Yeah, that's exactly it, mate.
Instead of actually continuing and going, well, hang on a minute, let's look at the evidence that a virus actually existed. They want them down this end because it benefits them next time because of what they want to come with China and the US.
Exactly.
China and the West.
And the major question for me in terms of a lab leak, if there was a lab leak, let's pretend there was, and it went across the world, it stopped off in Italy for a bowl of pasta, and then it came into the rest of Europe and all that stuff. Where did flu go?
Yeah.
Why did that disappear? Why did a biological weapon replace the flu? Mm-hmm. Does it make any sense? Because it's nonsense.
And also, a biological weapon that would be made to be able to cause catastrophe wouldn't give you a little cough and basically no symptoms for most people, if that's what it was. It would be something, pretty extreme, surely. Otherwise, what was the point of it?
And you wouldn't have to fix death figures with 28 days after a positive test, or even 60 days after a positive test, which is what it was in the UK for a large portion of 2020.
Well, yeah, there was people that had COVID deaths on their certificate who had died in car accidents.
Yeah, there was one guy, I think in Leeds, who fell 12 foot off a ladder and died of COVID. Must have caught it on the way down.
Normal.
There you go.
Right, we're moving on to the NHS, which is
here we go.
A topic of every single election, every single political argument here in the UK. The NHS is the golden goose, as you call it.
It's the golden calf, mate. You can't. It's golden. You can't slag it off.
No, you can't. Either. You can't. You definitely can't. And that's one thing that all political parties will agree on. But really, it's not fit for purpose. Hasn't been fit for purpose for years. It's not even in the top 10 healthcare systems in Europe. It's an absolute shambles for so many reasons, and obviously by design. But Rachel Reeves, the chancellor, who is, commonly known as Rachel from Accounts.
That's misogynistic. You're not allowed to say that, Jake.
She's talking about cutting regulation, right, for the NHS because of overspending. Sorry, I'm talking absolute rubbish. We're talking about Gareth Streeting, the NHS Health Secretary.
Wes Streeting,
sorry. I've had an absolute mare, guys. I've clicked on the wrong link, but I'm here now. So he's gone onto a newspaper show, a news show yesterday on Sunday morning, talking about the fact the NHS is addicted to overspending. Too much spent on bureaucracy, too much spent on middle managers and diversity quotas, things like that, not enough spent on the front line. I think most people in the country, based on just that line, would agree with that. Yep. They would go, yeah, I can completely appreciate that. There's always talks of not enough nurses, not enough doctors, not enough GP appointments, X, Y, and Z, but there's always job adverts out for usually decent salaries, mid six-figure salaries.
Decent salaries for middle management positions.
Which don't do anything. Yeah. Which absolutely don't do anything. So he's talking about removing all of that, what they call bloated bureaucracy, right? Which again, most people watching, most people listening would go, okay, well that makes a lot of sense. More money for doctors, more money for nurses, more money for appointments, for people to actually go and see people in the NHS rather than, people sat in offices, high rises that are never actually going to see patients. They can agree with that. However, when governments talk about saving money, they never actually save money. They just usually take that money and spend it in other areas. And the areas where they claim to have saved money just fall more and more by the wayside in terms of the quality of the service that they're offering. So cutting bureaucracy and cutting regulation, which I'm going to cover another story later, on a similar principle, sounds good in theory. However, what it can also do is completely reduce any checks and balances that go into making sure that care is at a certain level, making sure that the point of entry for corporations, drug companies, outside influences, in the media and big pharma, and also private healthcare sectors, which are taking more and more NHS contracts as we speak. Those checks and balances to make sure that they're doing the right thing and that they're regulated correctly can just completely go. There was no regulation in the lead up to the 2008 banking crash, hence why that crash happened in many ways, because a lot of things were done which were completely ridiculous, that was only going to end one way. And when you know that the agenda, and has been for years, is to privatise the NHS, to have a private healthcare system similar to how they have in America, well, the best way to do that is to make it so not fit for purpose that, one, people demand it, or secondly, it's in such a state of, a sorry state that it's impossible to revive and impossible to save. I think this could tie into that, to be honest.
Yeah. It's the same attitude as when you have a historic building that they want to knock down because they want to build a big, fat, massive pile of office blocks that are all made out of glass and steel. But they know that people won't support knocking the historic building down because it's a historic building. It's part of who we are as a city or whatever. Yeah. So what you do is you just let it fall into such decay and disrepair that it gets to the point where it's basically falling down, where you can turn around and go, so sorry, but it's dangerous.
Yeah, exactly.
It's dangerous. It's falling down. We're going to have to pull it down. I don't want to, but we're going to have to pull it down. And people go, oh, that's sad, isn't it? And then whack bargain hunt back on. That's kind of what they're doing. And they've been doing that with the NHS for a long time.
They have been. And I think until we spoke about this with elections previously, until, we spoke about banking, for example, until an official or a potential politician comes out and says we're going to stop banks creating fake money and lending it, and that whole financial system, you can't take a politician seriously. When it comes to the health secretary and health related things with the NHS, until they start talking about addressing the problem of why it's needing so much money, which is, okay, this is definitely a factor. Bureaucracy, middle management, over-regulation, absolutely. But another one is, why are so many people ill? Yeah. Why is diabetes exploding? Why is heart disease exploding? Why are there so many people in homes now needing specialist care for things like, what's the word I'm looking for? Dementia. And I've got it apparently today. Dementia, Alzheimer's, things like that, because the food that people are eating, the stress in people's lives, the radiation in the atmosphere, the toxic chemicals in household products, in drinking water, and all of those things are factors. It's not just one. It's a big melting pot of things that are causing this issue with people's health. And another one is the treatment. So until you start having a health secretary or a government come out and actually talk about that as the problem, which is identifying the problem before it becomes a problem and stopping people getting sick, you're always going to have a situation, if you have a rising population, which most countries do, particularly this one, where you're going to need more money. And also the cost of everything always goes up. The cost of living always goes up. So therefore, doctors, nurses, X, Y, and Z, they're always going to need more salary to survive. The cost of treatments, the cost of equipment, the cost of X, Y, and Z always goes up. So unless you deal with the problem head on, which is, why are so many people getting sick in the first place? You're always going to be in a position every year that it's going to need more and more and more and more. It's really basic if you don't, cut off the head of the problem. So it's clear that's not part of the plan. If Wes Streeting was sat there on this Sunday morning politics show saying, look, guys, we need to get Britain healthier because we're having rising rates of obesity, we're having rising rates of diabetes, we're going to start, take some of this money we're going to save here and we're going to start subsidising organic farm and we're going to start putting more tariffs on processed foods, we're going to start hiring the threshold of what's allowed to be sold in supermarkets. All of a sudden, that's a potential solution to the problem. And even then, that wouldn't take 5 minutes.
But they don't want to solve the problem.
They don't want to solve the problem, and
because the thing is, as well, it's all well and good. Like you look at this, you go, right, the NHS is hemorrhaging money. Taxpayer money is getting spaffed down the drain. Now, as far as the taxpayer is concerned, yes, it is.
Yeah.
But that money isn't literally being put in an incinerator.
Who's it going into the pockets of?
People are making a hell of a lot of money out of it. Big Pharma being a major one, and obviously Big Pharma is then funneling a portion of that money back into government, back into policymakers, back into regulators to allow the cycle to continue. So they don't want it to change.
Yeah, 100%. The other thing to just touch on here is going to be the job losses as well of these people. Talking about finding 50% savings to boost efficiency. Obviously, those 50% of people are going to need new jobs. There isn't those jobs out there, and you're going to create more dependency and more, potentially bill onto the state, which we know is part of the plan as well. They want more dependency on the state. So
that's, and I would add as well that those roles will be replaced by AI.
Almost certainly. Certainly.
I think Keir Starmer's choice of language about injecting AI into the veins of the United Kingdom wasn't an accidental terminology, I don't think.
It wasn't.
Okay, moving on then. So Pegasus, the horse with wings. Spyware. Now, Pegasus Spyware, you may well have heard of it. It's been connected to Saudi Arabia. They were using it. The Mexican government, I think, were using it as well. It was tied into the journalist Khashoggi, the one that was murdered in the Saudi consulate in Turkey.
Yep.
His phone was tapped with this stuff. So just a bit of background on it. Basically, Pegasus Spyware is created by an Israeli firm, as it always is, called NGO Group. Now, this spyware can access your phone. It allows them to access your phone remotely. So they can get into your phone. You won't even know it's there. They can use your camera. They can use your microphone, obviously, so they can hear what you're saying. They can record you. Also, what they can do is they can read text, but they can send text. So they could actually incriminate people for things. And obviously, they have access to all your emails and your social media and your DMs and all this kind of stuff. And it can also send DMs as if it's coming from you. So you could create all kinds of havoc with this spyware. Now, I saw a couple of reports over the last couple of days that basically Biden had put sanctions on this spyware being used that Trump has now lifted. Right? That was the posts, lots of posts going around about that. Now, the more I looked into that, the more I found that that's not actually the case. So yes, Biden's administration did have some form of sanction on this spyware, but he also signed, as if he signed, I don't know what day it is, does he? But his team signed a 2-year contract with them at the same time as putting a sanction on it being used. So that doesn't really make much sense. But either way, it's in place, and it's something that's very, very dangerous, obviously, in terms of your privacy and in terms of your security and your freedom. But another point that I wanted to make here, because it comes back to the Epstein list of the fact that, where is it, by the way? Have you seen it yet?
No, I've not. But, that was definitely, one of Trump's biggest claims. Maybe
definitely
it's under the table.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Maybe it's in China. But it's, so there's no Epstein list. Obviously, it was never going to happen because Mossad and the CIA are never going to give up their blackmail list. Why would they? We've been saying that for weeks. But this coming out of Israel, as a lot of these spyware firms do, and that they're connected to the Mossad and stuff. It's all part of why Israel, for a tiny little nation, has so much power because of the amount of compromat they have on people.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, everyone knows now, apart from the deputy head of the FBI who didn't know, Dan Borghino. It's a country in the Middle East when Epstein was working for. I can't remember which one it was. So that's what he said. Okay, Dan. So obviously Epstein was connected to Mossad, he was connected to the CIA. That was the whole point of his operation. That's why he had cameras in every room, so he could get compromat on very famous people, decision makers, politicians, royalty, which is how Israel has so much power, because you ain't ever going to oppose them, especially if they've got a tape on you. Now, what this software means is you don't need another Epstein.
No, you don't.
You don't need to have all these weirdos and lunatics going to an island and having cameras in every room to catch them, because you're in their phone.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Any little bit of dodginess, any little conversation that you have with someone who's underage, any backhanded deals you've got and money under the table and all that, because obviously, let's have it right, politicians particularly are as crooked as a question mark from top to bottom.
Yep.
You've gotten banged to rights with this software that then, what's your policy on Israel? Oh, well, I haven't actually decided yet. Oh, you have decided, son.
Also, what you just said about, talking to somebody underage or not talking to somebody underage. Because
Well,
if
yeah,
they
because
can
you can send messages,
if they can
exactly.
incriminate you for doing something that you haven't actually done, all of a sudden you don't actually necessarily need to do anything. So you'll have, politicians. I think they're split into various different categories. You've got your people that are just for sale for the highest price. Don't have any morals. Don't care. Just want to be rich. Just want to be famous. Just want power because they probably got bullied in school and have none in their actual lives. You then got people that know exactly what they're doing, that were bought and paid for from day one. And then you probably have people who walked into Westminster not having a clue. I've met some of them, not MPs, but people who are, think they have some influence, who have no idea how deep this goes, no idea how high up the control goes and how widespread it is. They still think it's relatively small and a handful, and we can make a difference. And they realise very quickly they can't. No. You're going to have MPs like that will have no idea about the influence here, that then maybe actually are going in there with some genuine intentions, that then have stuff like this put in front of them, and all of a sudden their rhetoric completely changes. Yeah. So, this is just their way of buying people. And what you mentioned there about the Epstein list and the fact that Epstein worked for Mossad, I'm absolutely shocked that some people still didn't see that. I saw you have an exchange with Isabella De Luca where she put up a status about how did I only just find out that he worked for Mossad, and you put something about because basically the mainstream alternative media is pointing you in one direction while other people have been saying this for years. Exactly. And him working for Mossad, the fact that Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad worked for Mossad, these things were commonly spoken about. I think Dad probably wrote about that in the 90s. So it's something that the fact that this is being brought out now, it kind of again ties into what you were saying in your first story about Chuck McCrum. That explains why Epstein was protected a little bit. That explains why he got away with it for so long. But the people that allowed that to happen, they're definitely not still in power now. They're definitely not still there now. And Mossad definitely don't still do this today. I think it kind of, again, it ties into that. It's chucking people a bit of a crumb. Yeah.
I mean, the interesting thing with that exchange with that lady, I'm not sure who she is actually. Should I know who she is?
She's just a political commentator in America.
Oh, okay. And the point I made to her, and it's something that I've noticed for a while now, actually, and you can apply most of your mainstream alternative people into this. Certainly the new ones. Yeah. Not so much Alex Jones, who's been there from the beginning, although his rhetoric has changed quite a lot.
And he's never really gone for Israel, to be fair.
No. But the new names that have appeared on the scene that are going and revealing amazing things on Joe Rogan, and oh my God, I can't believe he said that. They are 2017 talking points. From the actual alternative media. So you're looking at things like Epstein being Mossad and this lady going, I can't believe I didn't know. And you're like, mate, these are the talking points from 2016, 2017, now being revealed as, oh my God, Saturday emergency broadcast breaking news. It's like, mate, and this isn't to go like, oh, we're the OG. That's not the point of it. It's a question of why. Why are the talking points from 2017 now suddenly breaking news in 2025? It's weird to me.
Because I think there becomes a threshold, doesn't there, where you can't deny something forever. You can't. But what you want to do is you want to get past the point where the outrage is so high that if it came out then, you're in serious trouble. Like, for example, if it came out mid-2020 that they were euthanizing people in NHS hospitals across the UK with midazolam, you would have had riots on the street. If that came out on BBC One, at 6 o'clock news, there would have been riots in the street. If it comes out now, maybe did we help a few people on their way that were dying already? Yeah, maybe. And now the assisted dying bill's through. It's like, the bill's through now. Maybe we jumped the gun on it a bit, but it's through now. The outrage will be significantly less. Not for the people who lost loved ones, but for the people, the wider public, let's say. Same principle here. It's got to the point where so many people are talking about Epstein, so many people are talking about Ghislaine Maxwell, and a lot of people are talking about it as a result of the involvement of Prince Andrew, particularly in this country, that it's kind of, they've got to tell you something. But if they tell you that, it stops people looking into what's happening today. Stops people looking into what's happening with AI, stops people looking into what's happening with various different things that is happening across the world, that if you were talking about that today, that outrage would be very high because you can see what's going on. Instead, they want you talking about stuff that happened years ago that's, the guy's dead, or is he? Maxwell's in prison. It's not going to change the past. They don't want you looking at the present and the future, because you can change the future if you look at what's going on in the present. They want you looking back.
You're brave calling him Epstein. Because it's Epstein, isn't it?
Oh, is it?
But you saying Epstein, I'm sure that got Jeremy Corbyn in trouble once.
Don't care.
You might remember this, ladies and gentlemen. He called him Epstein in an interview, and they said that was anti-Semitic. You used the Stein on purpose to emphasise the fact that he was Jewish, and he got done for that. I hope I haven't just imagined that. I swear that happened. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a Mandela effect. But
Epstein,
I'm sure
Epstein, don't care.
Either way, he's a wrong'un.
Complete wrong'un. Right, we are going to talk about Rachel Reeves now. I'm going to get it right. Woohoo! Okay, so this ties into the story I was talking about with the NHS to do with regulation. So what Reeves is talking about is cutting regulation across the board, cutting bureaucracy on things like financial issues, environmental issues, housing, things like that. Which again, on some level, you can look at and say, okay, I can agree if there's bloated purses and money being sent out to people who don't need it, while getting things done that need to get done are being held up. Okay, people can look at that and probably have some sympathy with it. But that's never really what it means. The sales pitch is usually something that you can get on board with, but what it actually means isn't always. In fact, it's very rarely. So, Reeves said this on Saturday. Today we're taking further action to free businesses from the shackles of regulation by cutting red tape and creating more effective systems that will boost investment, create jobs and put more money into working people's pockets. Sounds like management talk. Absolute management talk. Let's go through some of those measures. Fast tracking new medicines through a pilot to provide parallel authorizations from healthcare regulators. So I'm looking at that going Operation Warp Speed.
Yep.
You're putting things through without the checks and balances and testing and long-term safety testing that should be put in place for any new medicine. Reviewing the £100 cap on individual contactless payments. How's that helping anyone?
I don't understand
how is that
helping anyone.
Contactless was 20 quid when it came out.
Yeah.
Now it's 100. All that's doing is making it easier for people to steal and then, tap, 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 off you go. I don't understand how that's helping anyone. I really don't. Simplifying mortgage lending rules to make it easier to remortgage with a new lender and reduce mortgage terms. Okay, that on the surface sounds quite a decent idea. However, in the lead up to the 2008 crash, as I mentioned earlier, the removal of regulations led to, or the sort of a lot of the removal of regulations led to people being given mortgages that they couldn't afford. And we've spoken in the past about the fact that a lot of people are 1 or 2 paychecks from the street living month to month. So there's no leeway if something goes wrong. We've also spoken today about job losses. So let's say you're one of those people that's lost your job and you're living month to month. Well, you've lost your house then. And obviously if the reduction in regulation means you can get a bigger house that you can't really afford, if you lose your job, it's even more of a fallback. So that I think is quite dangerous. And I think the wording there is very interesting. I'd like to know exactly what that means more so. But this is the really interesting one, Gaz. Civil Aviation Authority permitting at least 2 more large drone flying trials for deliveries in the coming months, which governments has said will cut travel times for blood samples from 30 minutes to 2 minutes between hospitals. Now, again, you could look at that and go, we can get blood tests turned around quickly, especially for very ill people, at 28 minutes quicker than it is today. A lot of people would agree with that. A lot of people would say it's not. It's about, we've seen the images in the skies of Amazon drones delivering stuff. We've seen the very draconian, weird little delivery things from local Tesco's that are being trialed in different parts of the country. That's what it means. That's exactly what it means. And if you're going to make these 15-minute cities that they want work, you're going to need things like that to make it work. So all of these things all tying together, they might all appear very random and very scattered and sporadic when they actually all tie in together. And all that I'm reading there is less regulation on medicine. Well, if anything, given what's happened in the last few years, there needs to be 10 times more regulation on medicine, not less. More digital contactless money, more cashless society, and then more involvement of AI, because that's what a drone is essentially, AI and technology in your daily lives. It's not about, how's that helping anyone? I don't understand.
If all the deliveries are done by drone, what are the immigrants doing for a living? It's a genuine question, because from what I can see, a hell of a lot of people that are coming to this country are delivery drivers. The overwhelming amount of them.
Yeah, Uber drivers as well.
Uber drivers, delivery drivers, Deliveroo drivers. Uber Eats, every single one of them. Well, they say it's about blood samples, but it won't be blood samples. It will be a chicken chow mein as well.
It will. It'll be all
landing through the window.
It'll be all of it. It'll be all of it. It's all part of the job grab.
It is
all part of the job grab.
I agree with you completely in terms of it. I mean, first of all, I will say, do you know what the term red tape comes from?
No,
it's a little useless fact for you.
He's very excited to tell you this.
So about 20 minutes from here, right, in a place called Wirksworth, there's an old mill. It's really, really old. It's a beautiful building, and it's called the Harlem Mill, right? And that mill, they used to make the tape, the red tape that bound government documents. It'd be made there and it'd be sent to London. They used to bound government documents with it to make it official. That's why it's called red tape. You can have that. Might come up in a pub quiz. When you're reeling off that, Jay, all I get from that is we've got a load of stuff that we want to implement.
Yep.
And there's a few things in the way called regulations. They're quite annoying. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of them. We're going to sell it to you, the British taxpayer, as a good thing. You're going to go, oh, thank God for that. It's too much red tape and everything. But what we're doing is we're just going to use it to just... Well, they're doing it with housing.
Yeah, they
so
are.
what are you going to find? How much?
Wind farms, solar farms,
all of that stuff. You used to have these green belts, they would call it, of land around cities and towns where you couldn't build houses because it's a green belt. It's about preserving the countryside, which I thought was good because like climate change, all that stuff will just end up being housing and housing and housing and housing. Who's affording these houses, by the way? I see it all the time. We saw it the whole time we were cycling. New housing estates.
Yeah, there is.
And we're not talking about like, little boxes. We're talking about some
big old houses.
Old houses. And you look at them going, who is living in these? Where are all these people that can afford this? Because you can look at it and you can go, well, that's fine. It's a swelling population because, there's so many people coming over to this country. They need housing. Okay, I get that. But trust me, you're not affording these houses in a country where AI is replacing your job. Universal basic income, which is what they want for all of us, ain't going to pay for these gaffes.
Well, the average house price, looking at this now, is just shy of 300 grand in the UK now. Just shy of £300,000 for the average house.
I work my arse off and I can't afford that.
No, same. It's absolutely astonishing. So you're right. Who is affording these houses?
That's the thing, isn't it?
Like in my village, there was a new development about 2 years ago, and we went for a walk around the woods, and you come out on the new estate, and we looked at this house that was for sale and thought, that's interesting. Let's have a look. 450 grand.
Is that all?
And it was like, what? Who's affording these? Who is affording these?
Well, what's happening is it's 5% deposits.
Well,
so
yeah,
people
exactly.
that can't afford them and don't have the deposit to pay for them are putting it. I'll borrow from Peter to pay Paul in a couple of years. I might be better off in a couple of years if I get that. I'll buy this house now while it's for sale because it's brand new. I can have it spec'd how I want it.
Yep.
I can have the plugs where I want them.
Yep.
Then suddenly, you're relying on 2 promotions for that.
Yeah.
Well, look at the way the country's going. Your job's AI now, son. Good luck with that mortgage.
Well, the other thing as well as the 5% deposit, is the 80-20 rule, which they're doing, where you buy the house. Sometimes it's 60-40, but you only own a percentage of it. The government own a percentage of it as well. So let's say, for example, just for argument's sake, to pick simple numbers, you're going to buy a house for £200,000, right? And it's an 80-20 rule. So you own £160,000 of that house. The government own £40,000. Well, you don't really own the house then, do you? You're still paying a mortgage, still paying probably £300,000 back over 37 years, 40 years on that 160, still paying double, but you don't own the house at the end of it. That was like, the ambition, wasn't it? If you look back through history, particularly recent history, last say 50 to 100 years, our parents' generation and grandparents' generation, that was like the thing that you wanted to get. You wanted to own your house by the time you retired, let's say. And obviously that was feasible. Like I remember when Mum and Dad bought the house on the Isle of Wight that I lived in, and you lived in when we were...
Nelson Street.
Yeah, Nelson Street. It was like £60,000 you could buy a 4-bedroom house for.
Yeah, semi-detached.
Exactly.
Nice
and it was like... that was reasonable that you could afford that and buy that and pay that off, and then you owned your own house. And that was a real sense of pride, wasn't it? You owned your house.
I dread to think what that house would be worth now.
Oh, yeah.
On the Isle of Wight. Because the Isle of Wight's expensive.
Probably closer to 300.
Mad.
But whereas now it's so unrealistic for people. One, because of the deposits that are required, or you go down the 5% route or the 80-20 or 60-40 where you don't really own it. Interest rates are insane, so you're paying back an insane amount.
Yeah.
More. Like, I pay £250 a month more now than I paid when I bought my house. It's the same house. My mortgage has not got any bigger. It's just the rates. Yeah. It's literally astonishing. And that's...
But if you don't keep up the payments, the government won't own 40%. They'll
own it all.
They'll have the lot.
They'll own it all. And that's part of the plan.
And you'll be happy.
You'll own nothing and be happy, exactly. You can essentially pay back... If you buy a house for 200 grand, you put 20 grand down, you owe 180, you could pay back 170 over how many years, and you lose your job and they'll take your house, even though you've paid back 90% of it. That's how messed up the system is. That's how messed up the system is. And I can't help but think, it's a conversation for another day, that the whole purchase of a house, the whole mortgage, the whole thing is a complete scam. The whole idea of it, in the sense of you own your own house. But do you really?
Yeah, I think the default point should probably be that everything is set up
completely
to be a complete scam.
Completely.
With us, the population, the victims of it.
Completely, 100%. And like you said earlier with the NHS, the locals and the people, taxpayers and the people paying the mortgages are struggling, not seeing where that money goes. But someone is.
Oh, yes.
Someone is. And these, big families, big banking families, big property development families, well, they're not getting poorer, are they?
They're doing all right.
I
said that in 2009, the big banking crash where everyone lost everything and everyone said, oh my goodness, these hundreds of billions disappeared.
Did they?
They didn't disappear, did they?
No, they just left your pockets and went into the pockets of certain individuals.
There we go.
Right, that's it for this morning, mate.
On that uplifting
end.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Well, everything's going to be fine.
Everything is going to be fine.
In the end.
Everything is going to be
fine. Have to fight a bit. It's going to be fine.
Metaphorically.
Yes, metaphorically.
Don't call for violence. You end up in jail in this country these days.
Thank you so much for watching. As always, it's brought to you with the new range.
Not brand new, no.
It's not brand new anymore. The new range of Iconic coffee. If you head over to shop.iconic.com, use the code TRENDING, you get 10% off, and all the profits made from that will come back into the company so we can bring you really uplifting video casts like this one.
No, we will bring more uplifting stuff. There's positive stuff going on out there.
Of course there is.
You just have to look for it.
11.5 grand raised, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much again. We'll be sharing what we're doing with that in the coming days and weeks. Right. See you tomorrow.
Take it easy. Bye. Ow.